Good morning. I'm just checking if my sound is audible. Can someone give me a test response, please? Morning.
Morning, morning, Carl. And
Morning.
morning, honorable members.
You can hear me, no? It's fine.
We can hear you.
Thank you. Take care. Thanks. Bye.
Good morning, co-chairs. Good morning, honorable members, minister and deputy minister in the platform. It's now 10 o'clock. Chairperson, you may start the meeting.
Yes, good morning, honorable members. Good morning to our guests from the... hello? Am I audible?
Yes, you are, Chair.
You are audible, Chair.
Thank you very much. I was saying, I was still greeting all our colleagues, even from the defense industries, as well as from the DACC, and our support staff in the committee. You are all welcome. I hope we are going to have a very productive and successful meeting. Today's briefing, today's meeting.
Recording in progress.
Is purely an informative meeting, but we also should bear in mind that it's our last meeting for the year. So I'm sure when the co-chair closes the meeting, we will have occasion to thank all members and wish you a very safe, prosperous, festive season and end of the year, hoping we will still see each other in the new year, happy and in good health. Now, as I was saying, this is an informative meeting to help members to get a better sense of what the South African defense industry is about, what it offers, and how it links with the work of the NCACC. The minister in the presidency who chairs the NCACC had written us a letter indicating that they've not yet met as the NCACC, and they would like to be present for the briefing and to unveil their plans for the year and give us the reports for the previous years. But in our conversation with her, we then agreed that she should rather send the DCAC, which is the administrative arm of the NCACC. And so what the DCAC will do is to brief us on the work of the NCACC and just sort of induct us into the work that they do, especially for those who do not know. So we agreed with the minister that in the new year, we will then convene them as the NCACC to come and meet with the committee, give us the full briefing, taking into consideration the meetings that they themselves would have had during this year and in the intervening period between now and then. The actual quarterly reporting and oversight of the NCACC reports will therefore only start in the next year. I hope that the members find that in order and we can start with the meeting. The agenda presented for the agenda that we have before us includes opening and welcome, which has been done, apologies. Then item 3 will be the introductory briefing of the South African defense industry by the South African Aerospace Maritime Defense Industries Association, which will be done by Mr. Sandile Ndlovu. Then we will get a briefing on the Directorate for Conventional Arms Control, DCAC, on its functions, challenges, and support to the NCACC, which will be done by Mr. Sipho Mashaba. We will then consider the report of the SANDF letter of deployment in support of the South African Police Services, which we discussed in the previous meeting. The last item will be the consideration of the minutes of the previous meeting, and then we will close the meeting hopefully at 1300 hours to enable those who are traveling to travel. Do we have comments on the agenda or a mover for the adoption of the agenda?
I move that we adopt the agenda, Chair.
Thank you very
Chair,
much.
do you see my hand?
No,
let's just go back to procedures. Are we going to use the mic to get started, or will you see the hands?
No, I've gone to the list of participants, so I had not opened it. So you are very well in order, Mr. Hatting.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Chair, I must at this point, with reference to your opening statement, register my discomfort with the Minister not being present. There's a massive industry out there that waits and has been waiting for months for the NCACC to be appointed and to convene and to get on with the work. It's months and months, and so even the appointment of the NCACC took months after the elections in the 7th Parliament to be established. And even before that, we have problems with meeting of the NCACC. And then for the Minister just to simply dismiss the committee and not be in attendance is really unacceptable. Also, and this actually makes me more uncomfortable. You may recall, Honourable Chair, that I have put a question about the NCACC to the Minister in Parliament, and she simply refused to answer the question. So I don't know whether the committee should only just take notice of this, but there appears to be a problem of accountability and respect towards this committee. Chair, but I would support Honourable Niehaus's proposal that we proceed, but please have my discomfort recorded.
Thank you, Mr. Hatting. Let me first note that the Minister is in the meeting and her hand is raised. I had not yet been aware of her attendance, and so she is going to introduce the DCAC and the matters that are relevant to it. So she's not snapping the committee. We had a conversation with her, and I think we understood that not because of her own making, but the committee only met, the NCACC itself only met yesterday. But the Minister's hand is up. I'm sure she's going to be able to respond to that. And the issue of the question that you had raised, I'm sure there are channels within Parliament for that to be addressed. But let me give the Minister an opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to members of the committee. And I think it's very unfair that I might get accused of not being here when I'm here. And even if I was not here, I would not have snubbed the committee. I had personally called the chairperson of the committee before I even wrote a letter so that we could align, because it's very difficult. Yesterday, our meeting was about an induction because we were appointed only on the 28th of October. The gazetting took place in November. We are still in November, albeit in the last days. And we have endeavored that when the committee was gazetted, we find time to then get an induction. We can't just meet without being inducted and knowing the do's and don'ts and what is applicable and also applying ourselves. We had an engagement yesterday with the DCAC in terms of inducting us in terms of our own responsibility. And being aware of the challenges and the gap that has been there, we have agreed that we are going to coordinate outside the normal calendar of the meetings of the NCACC. We are going to meet before we close so that we can then consider the applications from the industry that were there. And I came here, Chairperson, as per our agreement, and knowing that I also have other obligations, to say we are going to come back as we have. Our understanding is that you'll recall that the quarterly reports have been submitted. It's just that because there was not a committee in place, there was no committee members to then come and account for the decisions of the committee. So like you said, Chairperson, early in the year when you're ready, we will, and when we have gone through the reports ourselves, we'll come and account, and we know as successors in title, we take the responsibilities of the previous committee. We'll then come and account for that, and we'll continue to table the reports, and we'll have an engagement on how to do. The second issue, Chairperson, I had requested that we wanted the meetings to be physical, but I'm then informed, Chairperson, that the meetings of the Joint Standing Committee of Defense are open. So there's nothing wrong with the meetings being virtual. So we are fine with proceeding with the meetings being virtual. The things that that needs to be managed for national security will be accordingly managed. And Chairperson, I'd want to request your permission, given that item number 3 on the agenda does not affect me. It's the responsibility of the Minister of Defense. So can I be excused, and then I can then come back again, even if I have to mute myself and mute the meeting, and come back again to introduce the members of the DCAC, so that I come only when it's matters that affect me, so that I don't do a scope creep. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you for your attendance. I think it's fair that you mute yourself should you be required. I think when we come to item 4, we will be glad if you introduce the DCAC, and you had indicated correctly in our conversations that you are not able today to stay through the whole meeting. So that is understandable. I think we appreciate that. I also forgot, or no, maybe I was not aware that the Deputy Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, Honorable General Bantu Holomisa, is in the meeting. You are welcome, Deputy Minister. We appreciate your presence.
Thank
And the agenda having been moved for adoption and adopted, we can proceed now to the presentation by the defense industry.
Sorry, Chair. Can I read the apologies, Chair?
Oh, forgive me. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair, Minister, Deputy Minister, and all members present in the platform. I've got an apology from the Minister of Defense. She is in Pretoria leading the Women's League March to the Union Building. And then I've also got an apology from Ms. Lekwase and Ms. Khwekana. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any comments on the apologies?
Chair,
I don't know who is talking.
I don't have, in my gadget, I don't have any hand to raise. Greetings, Chairperson and the members of the committee, together with the ministers, the deputy ministers that are present, and the officials. It's Honorable Sokanyile. I'm part of the meeting, even though I'm also a duty whip in the mini plenaries, but I'll be part of the meeting. I'll be going at 12 o'clock. I'm tendering that apology, Chairperson.
Apology noted. Honorable No.
Thank you, Chair, and greetings to you and everybody and the Deputy Minister. Chair, I was just establishing whether the absence of the reason for the absence of the Minister, is it an official apology that we can accept, the question of attending the march? For me, it's not. That's my suggestion, Chair.
Yeah, yes, Honorable, no, yes, it is not, because the march takes place during the time of our long scheduled meeting, and I think it's a matter that we need to raise with the minister. And secondly, because she is not leading the march. It's being led by the leadership, the president and others of the ANC Women's League. And I don't think it's a matter we ought to be discussing as the committee. I think we will raise it quite strongly with the minister. Honorable Niehaus.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with you that we don't need to discuss it, but on behalf of the economic freedom fighters, I also want to register my dissatisfaction about this particular situation, that the minister is not with us, especially since this, as far as I can understand, is a party political matter and is not official duties of the Minister of Defence. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, honorable members. We will register officially the discontent of the committee with regard to the minister's absence, and particularly the reasons provided. I think we could have entertained better reasons, not the one that we've been given. Can we proceed then to the defense industry briefing by Mr. Ndlovu?
Thank you very much, Chair. A very good morning to yourself, to the Minister in the Presidency, the Deputy Ministers. I see Minister Mkhungwa is also logged on, and to the members of the committee. Chair, with your permission, if I may share my screen from my side, and secondly, if I may then be allowed to switch off my camera. I've just switched it on so that committee members, the honorable members, can see how I look like. And
Yes.
that it is indeed me, not Chat GTP.
Yeah, sure, you can you can switch your camera off.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can I confirm, Chair, if my screen is visible for all the members to see?
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much, Chair. Honorable members, thank you for the opportunity. And I would like to then, on behalf of the South African defense industry, first start by indicating that we really appreciate the opportunity to appear before you this morning. It is a long-standing and a long outstanding matter, and we are really appreciative of the fact that finally we can get this opportunity. Chair, I'm very mindful of time. So what will then happen is that I will just take the committee members, seeing that it is our first interaction. We are hoping for more interactions after this one. Just over a high-level view of our South African defense industry. We are an industry that is based in South Africa and therefore should be aligned to government priorities. So I will first take you through what we see as our contribution to those priorities, and then introduce the two bodies that represent our industry, and then just a high-level overview of the industry itself. And of course, we are an industry that does have challenges, and I'm quite happy that the biggest challenge has already somehow been introduced, and the Minister in the Presidency is here. And of course, Chair, we also believe that there are areas where we can positively contribute as an industry through ways of collaborating with our government in general. And with your permission, we will then take questions from the honorable members if there are any. Chair, I also have to indicate that there are some board members from the industry that are accompanying me this morning. So if we will have a question and answer session, some of the questions may be fielded by them, if you allow it, Chair. Chair, as an industry, we pride ourselves in the fact that we are an industry that is born and bred here in South Africa. And as a result, Chair, we always, every 5 years, review our priorities and review our objectives to align with what the government would have considered its priorities for that term. And for this 7th administration, Chair, we are aware that there are 3 main priorities that the government is pursuing: inclusive growth and job creation, the reduction of poverty and tackling of the high cost of living, and then, of course, building a capable, ethical, developmental state. Chair, we are happy to report that based on the capabilities that we have and the impact that we can make, we can positively contribute across all those 3 priorities of government. Towards the end of my presentation, I will make clear what those contributions could be and how much of an impact we as the South African defense industry can make. Chair, our industry is an industry that is very old. Of course, it's an industry that was established prior to 94. However, in the ushering of democracy, there was then a reorganization that took place within the industry representative bodies, in that all the industry associations that existed prior to that were then collapsed to form a new industry association that we now know as AMD, the Aerospace, Maritime and Defense Industry Association. So this is an association that has been in existence for over 30 years, Chair, and it's an association that is made up of industry players locally that has a very specific objective of ensuring that our environment, our ecosystem is conducive to the development and the support of our industry. Fast forward, Chair, to about 2015, we then took a decision, because at that time we had also started exporting quite extensively, together with the Department of Trade and Industry, now the DTIC. We took a decision that we also needed to establish an export council for the aerospace and defense sector. Thus, the South African Aerospace, Maritime and Defense Export Council was born, commonly referred to as SAMDEC. That Export Council was established jointly with the Department of Defense, the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, and the State Acquisition Agency for Defense, which is AMSCO. Those 3 entities, together with the AMD Industry Association, are part of the board of the Export Council. And the objectives of the Export Council, Chair, are determined by the Department of Trade and Industry. So the growing of our export volumes and value, growing of the export base, diversifying the base, which is a transformation and inclusion, and then, of course, diversifying our export markets to limit the exposure to risks that we would have as a regulated industry. Chair, we have a number of structures that we serve on, and we are happy that in some of these structures are structures that were created by government itself. Of course, the Export Council, we are the co-founders together with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. We also have a Defense Industry Fund where we are a partner together with the Department of Defense and AMSCO. And as a result of a defense review that General Olomisa participated in, there was an established structure called the National Defense Industry Council. We are a member of that structure. As a result of DTIC pressures, about 3 years ago, the Minister of Defense then, Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngabula, established a Defense Sector Charter Council. We are a member there. The DTIC established a special economic zone for the aerospace industry, the Centurion Aerospace Village. and we have been appointed as a chair of that Centurion Aerospace Village, that special economic zone. And we are also founders of a women in defense structure because of the special attention that we want to give to issues that are prohibiting women from participating fully in our space. The last one, Chair, is we are also a founding partner of the Aerospace, the Africa Aerospace and Defense International Exhibition. The last one was about 2 months ago in September at Waterkloof Air Force Base. So, Chair, in the main, these are the structures where we get to participate as the South African defense industry in close collaboration with our government. So our industry at a glance, I will quickly just run through the information that is on the slide. The presentation was shared timeously, so I hope committee members had the opportunity to go through it. We are one of the only industries on the African continent that has capabilities across all domains of warfare, from the aviation or the air to the maritime, to the land, cyber, and space. We play quite an active role in all those domains. From a production level, Chair, we have the ability to produce from level 1 up to level 5, which is at a product system level. What this means is that we have the ability to give South Africa as a country strategic independence and allow our country to dictate its own future, its own policies and its own objectives without being held at the ransom by some international or foreign forces that may want to influence us. Of course, Chair, we are export focused. We currently are exporting over 80% of what we produced. And the issue around the convening of the NCACC, that's why for us it's a life and death issue, because the NCACC is not just a regulator for us, it's an enabler. There is nothing that as an industry we can do without the NCACC express support and permission. So when they have not met since April, you can understand the havoc it is causing within our industry, Chair. And that's why we've been making all this noise, because we are an export-focused industry and we've not been able to export since around March and April this year. Now you can just imagine how difficult that is for us and of course for our international clients. We do have very well-renowned systems that we are exporting internationally, and these are systems where South Africa is considered one of the main industries in the world that can supply this system. We have, Chair, over 600 companies that are manufacturers that are actively playing a role in our sector. Of the 702 companies that we have, only one is a state-owned company. So you now have about 701 privately owned companies that are doing work within the defense industry. From an employment perspective, we are currently standing at about 20,000 direct employees. These are employees that are employed directly by the over 600 companies. And we often work with a multiplier of 6, which says for every job that we create directly, we have an impact of about 6 other jobs downstream. And those are jobs that are created to then support the job that we have. We also have quite an extensive foreign investment grouping of companies, primarily from Europe, that are located in South Africa, that are playing a role in South Africa, that are paying their taxes in South Africa and creating jobs locally. As I say, from Europe, from Sweden, Saab, France, Thales, Rheinmetall and Hensoldt in Germany, Damen in the Netherlands, Aselsan.
Excuse me, sir. It's just a moment.
Yes,
apparently, there is a person logged in only as iPhone. Now, we expect all members iPhone 26. We expect everyone who is logged in to identify themselves with their name and surname. Can iPhone 26 change their name to a name that is recognizable, or else we will have to remove them from the meeting forthwith? iPhone 26, please. You may continue.
Thank you very much, Chair. So we do have quite a large number of foreign investors that have located themselves in South Africa, and we are still expecting many more to do so, particularly from the from Eastern Europe, and from Southeast Asia. So just graphically, Chair, these are the companies. Some of the logos may be familiar to the committee members. And the most important takeaway, Chair, from this slide is a fact that we as South Africa have established a industry capability that would take 40 years for a new entrant to establish. We want to emphasize this, Chair, because if we do not change ways in which we are doing things, we then run the risk of losing this capability. And should we want in the future to re-establish it, it will take us an additional 40 years to get it to where we are now. So Chair, this is an asset that everyone needs to acknowledge as such, and then support accordingly. And we are the primary suppliers to the South African National Defence Force, and we pride, Chair, ourselves in the fact that we can supply and support them across all their platforms, irrespective of the domain where they are in, whether it's the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, our medics, or the joint operations environment. Of late, Chair, we've also established our space capability, because there is now a space command that has been established by the South African Air Force. So, Chair, this is an industry that is geared towards supporting primarily the SANDF, but also the security cluster as a whole. And as I said, Chair, this is what we have the capability of supplying. And from a production level, and this is quite important for committee members to note, is that we can produce up to product system level, with Denel being one of the primary systems integrators that we have. Chair, this becomes quite important for the committee to have this information, because we are often aware that a lot of information gets presented into you, to this committee, whereby foreign companies are being recommended to come into South Africa because we do not have some of the capabilities that the SANDF requires. Chair, we can boldly state that we can supply up to 70 or 75% of SANDF requirements. We are also not anti-foreign companies. No, that's not where we are. But whatever we say is that whenever we bring in foreign companies, they must be accompanied by a local company, so that we then indigenize whatever shortcoming that would have been identified. So, Chair, it's quite important that the committee is appraised of this, so that when you receive presentations from AMSCO or the SANDF itself, you can then check against the information that we as industry have shared with you. These are just some examples, Chair. I'm not going to dwell on them, but the only reason, Chair, we've put these in, particularly if you look at the left column on the South African government potential users. So these are some of the systems that we make within the aviation or the aerospace environment. If you look at the bottom columns, Chair, in across all the three, is that you realize the diversity of clients that we deal with within the South African government context. So it is not correct that issues of the defense industry only affect Minister Motshekga as the Minister of Defense. It is not correct, Chair. We accept that defense is our primary client, but it is not our only government client that we deal with, because the products that we produce have quite diverse applications, as the committee can see for itself. If one were to be pressed to identify a minister or ministers that are directly involved in the work of our industry, in fact, Chair, it would be the chair of the NCACC as an enabler for this industry to live and breathe, and of course the Minister of the Trade and Industry and Competition, because we are private companies in the main. The Defense Minister is our primary client, of course, and an important stakeholder, but issues of industry and how industry function are not solely in her domain only. So the minister that is really responsible for us, because we can't import or export without them, is the minister responsible for the NCACC as our regulatory body. Chair, these are some of the examples within the maritime space. I will not dwell on them. I just wanted it to be clear to the committee the diverse capabilities that we have. And Chair, we've made it a point that here we only leave or we only put products that can be manufactured and are manufactured locally. And these are South African owned products and capabilities. So South Africa should really be proud of where it now currently sits from a defense manufacturing perspective. And of course, the Army is the biggest arm of the South African National Defence Force, and in the Army as well, Chair, we can support them across their various requirements. And as we say, what gives us a great pleasure is that the very systems that we initially designed and manufactured for the SANDF can now be used by other government entities. So there is a diverse area of focus and participation that we can effectively, and we are, even though it's not in a fashion and in a concerted manner that we would like, but we are dealing with these various end users. And of course, this is in the command and control space where we've got a capability to support them as well. In our next engagement, Chair, if we get invited back, we will dive a bit deeper on these capabilities and the very respective and niche areas where our government can benefit from. Chair, we also supply international customers. Before 2015, if the committee members look at the column that talks to customers, right, the second bullet from the bottom, before the establishment of our export council, we were only exporting to about 15 African countries. With the assistance of the Department of Defense and the Department of Trade and Industry, and of course the NCACC itself, we've increased that number to 35 African defense forces. This is excluding our local client, which is the SANDF. Now, if one considers the fact that Africa has about 54 countries, of those, about 5 are under UN sanctions, you can then see that we have done quite well in accessing and penetrating the African market, but there's still more that can be done. We want to be the primary suppliers of African defense forces in line with AU, SADC, ECOWAS, and other regional body objectives. On the left, Chair, are just some of the products that we export to across the globe. So, Chair, when it comes to challenges, we decided to keep them very short, group them around 3 specific issues. One, of course, right at the top is the regulatory environment, and we are quite happy that the NCACC is now in place, and we are happy that there was a sitting yesterday where the members of the NCACC were inducted. We are, of course, Chair, disappointed that it means they did not consider the applications that are before them, but with the fact that the next presentation that the committee will take will be from the DCAC, maybe there is a plan in place on how these backlogs could be addressed before the end of the year. But Chair, what I would also just want to point out to the committee is the impact on the delays. Now, imagine any normal company that does not deliver a product that has been paid for since April. We are now in November, going into December next week. No client would be happy with that scenario. We are now, Chair, in a position where our companies have started losing money because in the defense environment, there are what is referred to as penalties, where if a company fails to deliver on time within the prescribed period, the client can start imposing penalties. And of course, those penalties are now eating into what would have been the profit for that company. And the profit section is now exhausted. They are now starting to lose money for the business that they would have received. So, Chair, the situation is quite dire. From an association perspective, we've had to write letters on behalf of companies saying we are engaging with our government. The NCACC will convene as soon as possible. And we had hoped that by the end of November, the backlog would have been cleared. But clearly, it's not going to be the case. We now have to go back to a very frustrated industry and say to them, yes, the NCACC met, but unfortunately, they could not consider the applications. So, Chair, we really request the NCACC and government in general to come to our aid here. Because, of course, the impact is that we are going to start losing jobs and companies are going to have to close down. Some of them are very small. So if you have now penalties that are more than what you have, it means you will no longer be solvent as a company. And Chair, the NCACC Act was last reviewed in 2012. There was a view and an idea to review it in 2022. But the last administration or the last parliament, I think, did not have sufficient time to then undertake that review. We are asking, Chair, that this administration, this parliament then considers the review of that act in the most serious nature, because we need to bring the act up to speed with where we are now. You know, some of the reasons why we are struggling with our regulation, Chair, just to give you an example, is that the act as it currently stands, it only calls on the NCACC to convene once a month and only for about 10 months or 11 months in a year. Understanding that the NCACC is an enabler, it means industry can only really bank on 11 days. Out of the 365 business days that we have, we can only bank on 11 days where decisions are taken. We want to implore the Parliament to review that and make it easy and efficient for us to do business as often as we possibly can, because we are losing quite a lot of opportunities, Chair, just on the regulatory aspect of the work that we do. Some of our competitors can get their permits issued within 3 weeks. You now have a South African company that would have been waiting for their permit for close to a year. There is no way we can compete globally under those circumstances. So we need to bring in the act to be in line with the circumstance and the environment that we're in. And then, of course, the digitization process. Currently, Chair, we have to manually submit applications. It doesn't matter whether the company is based in Western Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, Northern Cape. They have to manually come and submit those applications here in Pretoria. And we are all aware of the challenges that go with manual submissions of applications. The digitization process, Chair, is delayed, I think, by 4 years now. But I think the DCAC can speak more accurately into that. All that we are calling for is for a sped-up process to implement this digital solution that is there. And as industry in the past, and we will continue to do so, we've offered to help where there are challenges because we understand the value that this process will have. Chair, the second challenge is, of course, unstructured government support. It's unstructured because of the structure of our government and because there is no uniform understanding of what impact our industry could have. In the previous slides, Chair, I've given you an idea of who our end users are based on the products that we manufacture. And of course, those end users belong to various ministries. So it means you do not have a singular area where if you are an industry player and you would want to interact with our government, no one takes responsibility for you. Minister Motshekga, or the Minister of Defense, does it, but she's not compelled by law to do it because her primary responsibility is the SANDF and all other entities that belong to her, and industry doesn't. So Chair, we need to have a way in which we structure the support that we give to industry. As I said, we are private companies operating in a regulated environment, producing products that can be used by a number of government departments, both locally and abroad. It therefore follows that, the assistance that we need cuts from across a number of government departments. So we need to find a way of bringing all these stakeholders in and agreeing on a structured way in which we are going to support our defense industry. Lastly, Chair, there are structures that have been established. I did talk to them earlier, but unfortunately, most of those structures have collapsed. To say the least. NCACC is performing far below its expectations and it has virtually also collapsed. Defense Industry Fund, the defense sector charter, CAV are non-operational and it has been the case for the past 18 months to 2 years. And of course, there are vacancies within the Department of Defense here primarily. We're in positions that are critical for our industry to survive. So even the avenues that had been opened before for us to interact with government are now no longer functioning in the manner because there are no home bodies to man those posts or those structures. So, Chair, these are just some of the challenges that we are requesting Parliament to assist us with. So when it comes to collaboration, Chair, we believe that we need to be part of the solutions to some of the country's problems. So we've listed a number of areas where we would request that even Parliament comes to the party and join us in collaborating so that we address some of these areas. The first one is a industry lekgotla. For about 3 years now, Chair, Minister of Defense Ngagula, Minister of Defense Modise spoke of a need to have a lekgotla or a bosberat or a council where government can interact with our industry. It hasn't happened. We have placed this requirement and this request before Minister Motshekga, but in that lekgotla, there would also be a need for Parliament to participate. And we are now requesting that you also then agitate for this lekgotla to take place. From a growth perspective, we are in industry that has a potential to be a 70 billion per annum contributor to the fiscus because of the products that we make and because of the clients that would want these products from South Africa. So if we can sort out our regulation and we sort out the support that gets given to industry, we can easily within the next 5 years be a 70 billion rand contributor to our fiscus. There is a potential, Chair, to create about 50,000 high-tech direct jobs within our sector. And these are jobs that the country needs because over and above the products that we make being used by a number of end users, it also follows, Chair, that the people who make those products go on to have an impact in other sectors of our economy. So for the digital age that we are in, the fourth and the fifth industrial revolutions, the jobs that our industry can create are the jobs that would allow South Africa to take full advantage of that era that we've entered into. And of course, transformation and inclusivity. We know we have fallen behind here, and hence we are calling for government to partner with us. We want to be transformed. We want to be an inclusive industry, but we cannot do it on our own in the absence of opportunities. So that's why we would want to collaborate on that. The SANDF chair remains our primary client, and we understand the challenges that they are going through from a budgetary constraint perspective, but we think there are ways in which we can continue to support them in the midst of their budgetary constraints. And we've outlined those proposals to the hierarchy of the South African National Defence Force. And we've also engaged with the Chief Procurement Officer at National Treasury to see if we can't have a acquisition process that is fit for purpose for the SANDF, because the SANDF is a unique client from other government clients. Denel remains one of the primary players in an industry, so when they struggle, it affects all of us. We are then saying we also need to partner to revitalize Denel to go back to its former glory. Of course, in whatever shape or form that revitalization will take. And Chair, alternative funding framework for SANDF requirements, to implement the defense review of 2015, at the last count, we required about 70 billion rands just for the special defense account to implement the defense review. Surely with inflation and everything else, that amount would have gone up. Treasury will never have that kind of financial muscle on their own. They would never have. So we need to come in as private sector and see how we can assist to support the SANDF in the midst of those budgetary constraints. And of course, there are funding models that we've proposed. So, Chair, in line with the first item of the industry, we've seen other sectors do it, and we would also want to do a collaboration or a compact between us as industry and all the role players in the government environment, both at the executive and in the parliamentary structures, National Assembly and NCACC, where we can then partner with government, because security is quite an important issue, and whenever security is lacking, you then get a center that is not holding, a central government that is no longer in charge of the country, and that is a scenario, Chair, that cannot be acceptable to any of us. So these are the opportunities that we would want to engage Parliament on. We are already engaging the executive on them. Chair, when it comes to the SANDF, supporting the SANDF specifically, we are calling, Chair, for an introduction of a public-private cooperation arrangement for defense and security projects. This is a slight modification from the PPP framework that National Treasury normally employs for build or structural construction projects. We are saying there is a way in which we can work within an existing regulatory framework to support the SANDF by bringing in private funding, of course, in a controlled manner, in a manner that does not compromise the security of our country. So we have been, for the past year and a half, calling for a dialogue around public-private cooperation for the security or for the defense environment. And we've said we need to extend it to the entire security cluster, because the challenges that the SANDF is facing are also the same challenges that the police may be facing, border management authority and whatnot. And we will then, if that gets to see the light of day, we will then be able to rejuvenate and modernize the SANDF, and also rejuvenate and modernize us as an industry in the process, because we've got a symbiotic relationship between the SANDF and the South African industry. The reason we are exporting so much is because there was a decline in the SANDF budget. Ideally, we would want to be supplying 90% of what we produce to our own country, to our client, the SANDF, and only 10% for export. If we go back to that scenario, Chair, the NCACC will no longer be a challenge or a factor that it is now. And then, of course, planned and unplanned maintenance and the operational effectiveness, and of course, strategic teaming could be one of the other benefits from this public-private cooperation arrangement. We are aware, Chair, that AMSCO has appeared before Parliament and, of course, the SANDF itself on some of the challenges, and, of course, maintenance of their capabilities, their prime mission equipment is one of the biggest challenges that they have now, and we can definitely assist. Chair, I'm not going to dwell on this, but what we are now calling for is a scenario where we start contracting on a contracting for availability model and a contracting for capability model. Currently, the SANDF and AMSCO are operating on the lower side of defense contracts, where we just supply whatever it is and we walk away, and they then struggle to maintain and upgrade their equipment. We are seeing that with their aircraft, we are seeing it with their ships in the Navy. So we are saying, look, as industry, we can come in and help you maintain your capabilities to ensure that they are always available whenever you need them. And when the time comes to replace whatever capability, we can also come in to help you replace those capabilities.
I would like you to round up. We've got
Chair.
quite a long agenda and limited time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I am rounding up. So the scope of collaboration for the main arms of services, Chair, is quite broad, from equipment, systems, facilities, and naval platforms. So we can help fix the dockyard. We can help the Air Force in its bases and in its equipment, and the Army and the Army as well. And the funding mechanism, Chair, as I said, we could bring in private funding in cases where the state has its own funding. We can do that, but in areas where we have brought in private funding, there are various repayment methods that could be utilized, where we can pay over an extended period or payment through capital expenditure. In cases when we were still involved with UN missions, some of these repayments could have been done by reimbursements or a hybrid of the above. Meaning, Chair, we've clearly thought this thing through, and we know that it can work, it can be possible, provided people just think outside the box. So, Chair, this is the last slide, the request that we are making to the Joint Standing Committee. Of course, top on the list is the review of the NCACC Act, and then the support of industry through the budgetary process, promoting us whenever you interact with other parliaments from across Africa primarily, but to the rest of the world. And then the laws that would stimulate innovation and technology absorption, agitate for the Lekgotla. And last, Chair, we would like to extend an invitation to the committee to visit industry so that you get a better sense of what we can make and who we are, because our industry, Chair, is more than just Denel. And we've noted that in the past, in committees would normally visit Denel and they would say they visited the industry. We've got over 700 companies, and as I said, Denel is but just one of them. And then, Chair, I will not dwell on the conclusion. I've already mentioned some of these points. But Chair, with your permission, I would like to then thank the committee for the audience that you've given, and I would then submit back to you, Chair. If there are any questions that would want us to entertain, I'm available to entertain those. Thank you very much, Nhlangothi.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, we've had quite an extensive presentation. I open the floor now to you.
Chairperson.
Yes.
Can I respond on two issues?
Yes, Deputy Minister, you may.
In our meeting yesterday, that is the meeting of the NCACC, we agreed that we are going to meet again before Christmas to look into the pending permits and applications so that the companies can do their business. Unfortunately, the gentleman who has just presented to us is quite correct that there has been a delay since April. So we asked those questions yesterday as to how would we speed up the process of approving those applications. And we resolved that we will meet after this briefing and just before we close down. Lastly, we also resolved that every Thursday of the last week of every month, the NCACC will meet to look into the agenda of its agenda and applications and so on. I thought I must just respond to those two issues. Lastly, the truth of the matter is that the military, the defunding of the military, of the defense, has actually affected the military industry in this country. And until that defunding is stopped, the better for the military industry and also to create jobs for the people of South Africa. So we are hopeful that the National Treasury this time around will listen to the plea of the South Africans and the defense that we cannot compromise the security of this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. We've got two other hands, Honorable Niehaus, followed by Honorable Harting.
Thank you, Chair. Let me first of all thank Mr. Ndlovu for the expansive presentation that he has given us. I think with regards to the issue of the NCACC, while we appreciate that the NCACC has now been constituted, and I also appreciate what General Holomisa has shared with us in terms of them prioritizing the applications in front of them, we as a committee must register formally our dissatisfaction with the long delay that there was. Chairperson, I believe that we need to act in terms of making sure that accountability is there. Money has been lost, reputation has been lost because of this inordinate delay. We need to get a better explanation why it has happened. And I'm glad that we now have a commitment that these issues will be addressed in the future in a better way, but there must be accountability for those who fail to act in time expeditiously on this matter, because the losses that we have suffered may not be possible for us to recuperate. That's the first issue, Chair. Secondly, Chair, we are faced with a situation where the South African National Defence Force has serious budgetary constraints. And evidently, this impacts on our armaments industry. I think we need to register as a committee our serious concern about how that impacts on our own capability to have the South African National Defence Force being able to defend the national sovereignty of our nation. When I hear Mr. Ndlovu speaking, it is very disconcerting to understand that the bulk of that which is manufactured by the armaments industry in South Africa is currently being exported. That in itself is a defense and security risk that we are faced with. I sincerely hope that what General Olamisha has shared with us in the past about a possible increase in the budget of the SANDF to about 1.25% of gross domestic product will take place. And that over a period of time, we will be able to return to a situation where 90% of what is manufactured by our manufacturing industry will be sold to the South African National Defence Force. Otherwise, we continue to expose ourselves. Chair, I've also looked at the list of countries that has been mentioned by Mr. Ndlovu, where exports go. And I see amongst those countries, the United States of America and also Western European nations. Understandably so, Chair, but at the same time, I would like to get clarity, although the name of apartheid Israel does not appear on that list, and I'm glad that it's not there. What provisions are being put in place to make sure that none of the armaments that are sold to these other countries, some of them, and very particularly the United States of America, being close allies of apartheid Israel, what provisions are there that will ensure that none of the armaments that we produce eventually find its way through to apartheid Israel? That will be utterly unacceptable. And I conclude, Chair, by recommending Mr. Ndlovu also for stating that the manufacturing industry is not only with the SANDF as the prime client, but that there are other very important clients. And we saw when we visited the African Aerospace exhibition at Waterkloof, the products that have been produced by our armament industry also for the South African Police Service, notably an adaptation of an armed vehicle and troop carrier for the eThekwini Metro Police. And these are the kind of extensions and support that I would like to see being expanded on, because that will also assist us in order to sell a larger part of what is manufactured by the armaments industry in South Africa locally in South Africa. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Hatting.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, certainly I would like to thank thank for the presentation. It was certainly enlightening and highlighting the serious pressure that is on the South African arms industry. Three aspects. And on the first one, and I don't know whether Deputy Minister Olamisha would be able to answer, but the question of payments for procurement and services to the arms industry. This is a serious concern. The Department of Defense has been listed for 2 consecutive years as the worst State Department in paying its creditors. And we know what's the impact. It cascades right down to a worker. Thousands of people there in the street that cannot take money home for Christmas because they depend on the payments from the department. We need an answer from the minister if there is a plan in place to address this, because we are throttling the industry. I don't know whether this must be flagged for the minister to respond, or whether the deputy minister will be able to respond on this, and if there has been an intervention, and will the Department of Defense now move down the list, and more than 90% of late payments later than 30 days are in this government, comes from this department. This is very, very serious. The second thing also throttling is the delays in decisions from the NCACC. And yes, I appreciate that there will be a meeting of the NCACC before December, seeing that they have last met in April. But we've also heard about 11 days out of 365. This certainly cannot be allowed to continue. There should be a mechanism to address the demands of the industry, a very high, internationally, very highly competitive industry. And if an exporter needs to wait months and months just to give a yes or no to a potential importer, it makes South Africa not a reliable provider of military equipment. Then I would like to also understand what we know two things. We know that because of a very limited budget available for maintenance, also for procurement, we know that our prime mission equipment is in a very bad state. And we heard that the industry is actually begging, give us an opportunity to come in and to provide it. Yet, we have provided hundreds of millions to so-called to Cuban so-called engineers to work on our military army equipment. I would like to know from the industry, how does that impact on the viability and the sustainability of the South African arms industry if things like this is happening? Then, no, those are my questions. Is then the three facets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, we are all aware, and it's just practice in government, in parliament, that if you join a virtual meeting, you have to identify yourself with your correct name and surname. I don't know who is Galaxy S24 Plus. And I'm not going to point at this person until I know who they are. You've got to name your gadget and your surname so that we know that you deserve to be in this meeting or not. I will proceed to call on the Deputy Minister. You're welcome, Deputy Minister Mkungo. You may please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Just to say that first, I have to apologize that I joined the meeting later. I tried to change the flight that I had been booked in. I could not find the alternative. They are fully booked. So I thought I should raise that so that I show respect to the meeting. It's just that I had already raised my hand, but I want to echo the same sentiment with my colleague, Deputy Minister, Honorable Olomesa. He covered me on behalf of defense, but I must also raise that I echo the same sentiment with what Honorable Nehaus articulated with regard to our posture on Israel. These are the aspects that you have to always cautious about it as a South African government. Lastly, it's just to say this is a rare opportunity, and I'm impressed that this presentation was well articulated by a Black person. just to demonstrate that we are now equal in the international space. We have to be ready to articulate more, because the reality is that as South African SANDF, we are not well equipped currently. If such local industries are in our midst, why don't we grab the opportunity to make sure that we empower them more than they are empowered? I thought I should raise that part, otherwise all my colleagues there had already covered me. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. We note your apology and appreciate your presence in the committee. I have been informed that Honorable Gerike is Galaxy S24, and he gives an explanation why he is not identified. We understand the technology challenges. Honorable Gerike, I don't know whether you still want to speak, but I would like to just request members that in future, if you are having a difficulty getting your gadget identified, you must contact the committee support staff or one of the chairpersons to alert us so that we are aware. But Honorable Gerike, I don't know whether you still want to proceed with your input.
Yes, Chairperson, good morning, and good morning, colleagues. Am I audible, Chair?
You are very audible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. First and foremost, I apologize for this inconvenience. Just recently I have changed gadgets, and IT still needs to set it up for me. And then secondly, Chair, the presentation is very clear and well articulated, and thank you to those that have worked on the presentation. I am mainly covered by my colleague, Honorable Carl Nias, but I also want to understand, because this is a serious matter of concern, the exports of armament. We don't have control once it is out of the borders of our country. Obviously, it's an autonomous sale, and the countries that buy, they may say they can do whatever they want to. However, this is the intellectual property of our country, and surely one way or the other we may dictate in terms of contractual obligation as to who may be sold or not. Yes, it is a concern. We agree that our specialized weapons may end up in the hands of those that kill and murder en masse in this world at the moment, and there are many of them. So maybe we should take legal guidance on this, and if the legal guidance, maybe by an explanation in the next sitting as to how we can combat or prevent the export of our armament and our weapons to countries that kill, innocent citizens, like it's happening in the East at the moment. So a legal opinion would be welcomed. I don't know if we can make that ruling, but yes, this is our concern as the EFF. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gerike. We will be advised by our content advisors on the legal possibilities of your recommendation. But we have Honorable Phala, followed by Honorable Shelembe, followed by Honorable Hala. And I would like to, is Honorable Gerike, are you raising? Okay. So after Honorable Hala, we will then take the response from Mr. Ndlovu, and we will move on to the next presentation. Honorable Phala.
Thanks, Honorable Chair. I'm trying to switch on my video here. It says unable to access the camera. I don't know. I'll need to be assisted as well. My apology.
But I think you may proceed. And
I may
speak.
proceed.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and good morning, honorable members. Good morning, deputy ministers on the platform, and good morning to support staff, and good morning to Mr. Ndlovu and thank you very much for your presentation. Mine, Chair and honorable members, is on the slide of challenges, the industrial challenges, and Honorable Deputy Minister Khulumisa has answered it. But I would say, Honorable Minister, we really need more from your side, and to assure us as a committee that the issues which are raised by the industry are resolved within a short space of time, because of this. Obviously, they have impact on employment opportunities and also on the possibility of companies being closed. And while we are under serious challenges of employment in this country, we cannot afford that. So I'm just pleading and saying, honorable ministers, we understand where we are as a country. From April up to now is quite a lot. I would say we request you to give the industry, the attention they deserve, in order for them not to lose, the clients they are having. Obviously, the clients, if you don't supply, as Mr. Ndlovu said, they will penalize them, and secondly, they will go to another country. They will go to another a possible supplier on what they need. So it's just my request, honorable ministers, that let's give them the attention they need. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Co-Chair. Could we go on to Mr. Shelembe?
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, my concern, one of the challenges that were raised, I think by the Portfolio Committee on Defense, I think around 2022, where there was an issue of the cabinet reshuffling, like the changes in the cabinet, where it seems those changes are affecting the issue of issuing license, the permit, especially with the countries like in the East and Africa. I'm just checking now if that issue is being addressed, and what's your feeling about that? Because if you look at the committee of the NCACC, you have the ministers that are serving there. What is being done to address that issue of changing the ministers time and again, especially in the defense department? And I think if maybe I can get a clarity on that, because it seems we may have this problem continuing, where the ministers or any person being changed, in the government cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Shelembe. Could we have Honorable Hala?
Thanks, Chair. Chair, having visited the 4 arms of service I think 3 months ago. And we saw the state of affairs. I'm happy now to hear this from the CEO of industry, from the industry, that to address, though they may not have seen what we saw there, but I'm happy to hear from them that they are prepared to revitalize Dinel. They are also going to support defense on budgetary constraints that we all know. And they are also going to rejuvenate and modernize SANDF. Rejuvenate and modernize the South African defense industry complex and improve operational effectiveness. My closing remark, Chair, would be that let's support this proposal so as to address the challenges that we saw when we did the oversight. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Gotzel.
Thank you, Chair. Please excuse me from putting on my camera. My bandwidth is very low. I was going to raise this later, but I think seeing as the topic has come up now, and we have both the ministers and the industry, I was wondering if one of them could just answer the following question, and that is whether South Africa is supplying arms to any country that is currently involved in active conflicts. The reason why I'm asking that is that there has been reports that the South African Mamba armored vehicle is used in the war between Russia and Ukraine. And if that is so, I think perhaps the committee should be made aware of it.
Honorable Gotzel, would that not better serve as a question in another discussion? Because I don't think that the defense industry is going to be able to answer that question. My suggestion is that questions which are earmarked for the executive should be directed to the executive outside this presentation. Otherwise, we're going to open up committee for a parliamentary question and answer session, which it is not established for.
All right. I'm happy to keep it to later. I just thought perhaps Mr. Ndlovu would have some of this information as well.
Let's rather reserve the question for the executive. I think we will indicate, you may put it as a question for the minister, and the deputy ministers will indicate, I mean, they should note the question. There is a number of other issues which have been raised about including the Middle East. So let's note those questions for questions to the executive. For
yes,
now,
that's why I raised it now. Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your cooperation. Could we get Mr. Dr. Janse van Rensburg? I would rather ask that we take the issue you want to raise outside the session today, and rather take a response from the industry. Honorable Niehaus, I don't know whether this is a legacy hand or a new hand.
Chair, no, it's a new hand. I'm quite good in lowering my hand once I'm finished. I just wanted to ask, as a matter of procedure, if you can allow Mr. Ndlovu and the ministers who are present here to respond to the general issue of how we manage and control armaments that we sell to other countries so that they do not end up in the wrong hands. I think that is an appropriate question for this particular presentation, especially since we received a list of countries where these sales are taking place. I do take your point that on the rest of the questions that have been asked, specifically with regards to those countries mentioned, that it can be raised as questions to the executive in Parliament, but the overall general issue of how we manage the possible sell on, so to speak, or move on of weapons that we sell to client nations, I think is a relevant one for this forum. Thank you, Chair.
Indeed, we were going to expect them to answer to the general questions, and I would like to, Mr. Plakis, honorable members, I know that last week, in our previous meeting, you indicated that you insist on speaking in spite of time limitations. We may soon run out of time for the next 3 other agenda items that we have. And I would like to limit the discussion to available time. But Mr. Plakis, Honorable Plakis, I give you as the last person before the industry response.
No, Chair, thank you, Chair. I thought I'll be covered by my colleagues. I just want clarity, Chair. The reason for the 80% export, is it only because of the defense budget, or is it also matters to do with defense preferring to procure from outside of the country? I just wanted that clarity, Chair.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Ndlovu and other members of the industry in your delegation, we actually welcome the board members who are here. Let me allow you to respond now to the questions that have been asked.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and thank you to the honorable members for the questions. Chair, mine is going to be a very short and sweet reply. Most of the points that were raised, Chair, were comments with no specific direct question. We welcome those comments and we thank the support of the committee and the expression of the committee chair commiserating with us in the situation that we are in. We also, Chair, would like just to thank the explanation given by Deputy Minister General Wolomisa. We had said, Chair, better late than never. So if we can then take that before the 13th of December, the committee would have met and deliberated on all the backlogs that are outstanding, Chair. We would be eternally grateful for that. And Chair, we also subscribe to the notion that we have to find a long-term solution for our regulatory landscape. As we have said, the NCACC, Chair, is more than just a regulator to us. It's an enabler. Because from our exploration permits, our marketing permits, contracting permits, export permits, so we can't deal without the NCACC. So, Chair, we would really urge that we do find a long-term solution for that. Chair, there was also a question about what happens when the government or cabinet changes. We have gone through a number of cabinet reshuffles in the past, Chair, and the NCACC does get affected.
Jump that question. It belongs to the executive. Don't answer. You have no involvement, direct or indirect, in the changes in the executive.
No, that's correct, Chair, but the impact is solely felt on us, but I take your guidance, Chair. I will jump that one. Chair, with regards to questions around the on-sale of products, once the South Africa has agreed to sell to a specific country, Chair, the next presentation from Mr. Mashaba on the NCACC, I think they would be best placed to respond to that question because it falls solely within their responsibilities. From where we sit as industry, Chair, we have to provide what is referred to as an end user certificate, where the end user would declare that they will not move that product to the third party without involving or without informing the government of South Africa. So there are mechanisms in place, Chair, that prevent movement of goods outside of the two involved parties. With regards, Chair, to the question on Cuba, this is my second last response, Chair. With regards to the question on Cuba, we did indicate right at the beginning, in fact, when that project started, that it would have an impact on industry, because effectively you would be bringing in people who should be doing ideally what should have been done by industry. So we have had a number of engagements with the logistics environment to try and see if we can find ways of working within the available prescripts. Just like on the previous question, Chair, on that one, we had no direct involvement in the conceptualization of the project, but the impact was indeed felt. The other thing that also affects the Cuban project, Chair, is that most of the equipment that is currently under utilization by the SANDF would still be equipment that is under OEM warranties. So it prevents third parties from working on those products without the OEM involvement. So I think those are just some of the challenges that the Cuban project has had, but the SANDF can speak to it more accordingly than I. Last, Chair, the reason we are exporting 80%, it's in the main because of budgetary constraints. The SANDF has in fact stated that if it were up to them, they would want to operate all the products that we bring to market. As it is, Chair, we are unfortunately in a situation where we sell high-end technology, high-end equipment to other countries when the South African National Defence Force has not had opportunity to even test that equipment in terms of its effectiveness. So the main reason for that 80% export figure is primarily the shortage of funds from a Department of Defense environment. Chair, I think those are the questions that one can answer. Others, I think Mr. Mashaba will be best placed to respond to them. Chair, in conclusion, thank you very much to yourself for the opportunity and to the committee for granting us the audience. We are available whenever the committee would like to engage us again. Siyabonga kakhulu, Mhlonishwa.
Gatsheni. Honorable Shalembe, I see your hand is up.
Yes, Chairperson. Well, I know that anyway you are using your prerogative, to say you must not talk about this. But my intention to ask that question was to see, the latest impact of this thing in their duties. So not that he can decide what the cabinet must do, but to say the impact of, this thing is still, affecting them. But anyway, you have taken a decision to say he must not answer. No, thank you.
I thank you, Honorable Shalembe, for your cooperation. I think, Honorable Gatsheni, you've heard very well the views of the committee, the support for localization of the defense industries, support for the increase in the defense budget, not because we are militaristic, but because we believe that a well-equipped national defense force is the first line of defense for the country, but also the military is part of South Africa's international relations endeavors. We believe that the prestige of the country internationally depends in part on the ability of the National Defense Force to undertake its missions both abroad and domestically. And for that to be possible, it needs to be well equipped. It's men in uniform, men and women in uniform need to be well trained, and that the sector has a very key role to play in the increase in South Africa's GDP. But over the years, we have seen the decline, not only in defense spending, but also in the numbers of people employed in the sector. And we would like to see a positive change in that regard, which takes into consideration that South Africa has got domestic and international obligations, and would prefer, as the committee, and I think it's the policy that is preferred by most members of the committee, that local manufacturing be prioritized, as well as local procurement for locally manufactured products should be is the preferred option, even to the extent that we export any of our locally manufactured products. We are of the view that it's better that they are manufactured locally, and we use that as part of the ways to increase South Africa's GDP and well-being. You also the other issues that you raised, such as the NCAA, the NCACC Act review, the issues of digitization, the meetings of the NCACC, issues of vacancies, industry lekgotla are well noted. The deputy ministers who are part of the meeting have heard you, and you are correct to say some of the things you believe that the DCAC will be best suited to respond to them. So we note those issues. We note your invitation to the committee to visit industry. Hopefully in the new year, we should be able to undertake such a visit and engage with industry at a strategic level. But thank you very much. You are allowed now to recuse yourselves, but you can sit in to listen to the DCAC presentation since it's a matter of interest to you. I proceed straight to DCAC, sorry. And you may go ahead now and make your presentation. My understanding is that that presentation is being made by Mr. Mashaba.
Chairperson?
Yes, oh, Honorable Minister.
You have kept me here to introduce them, and I would want to do that and exit, please.
Yes. Forgive my over-enthusiasm.
No, that's fine, Chairperson. Chairperson, thank you for the opportunity and the understanding in our conversations as we're preparing for this meeting. There are a few things that were said in the previous conversation that I need to clarify. The backlog is not from April 2025. The backlog is from August 2024, and I'm sure as they present, they will then clarify that as they induct you. They did the same induction, and yesterday in our induction also, there's no need for the review of the act. There's another act that we must get the regulations of that done so that we can then strengthen the work that is done, because the current act complies with all the UN obligations and the various treaties. I'm not sure if they are ready with the treaties for you, because yesterday they were telling us the treaties on a high level, but we have requested them that they give us the treaties, both the actual treaty and also the summary of that treaty. It will then indicate that the act as it is, the current act, it then is fully compliant with those treaties. So any change will then make us file for the treaties that we then, there may be regulations that we need to strengthen, there may be processes that we need to strengthen. And as they present, you'll also understand the type of information we are allowed to share and not allowed to share. And we must also be cognizant of the fact that AMD does not represent all registered entities in terms of the act. So we can't then treat them as such. We may want to also engage with the other industry players, but Mr. Mashaba and his colleagues should be able to advise on that. As we have said earlier in the beginning of the meeting, we'll remain available to the work of the committee to assist the committee as we do our accountability to the committee and work to end, looking forward to a very good working relationship with you, co-chairpersons and members of the committee. And I'll hand over to Mr. Mashaba, Sipho, and I'm requesting that I be recused from the meeting. And Deputy Minister Holomisa is a member of the NCACC, so whatever issues that they may raise, he should be in the same position as me. We were both inducted yesterday to be able to respond and clarify. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. We appreciate your opening remarks to introduce the DCAC. Mr. Mashaba, you are therefore welcome to present.
Chairperson and ministers and all members of the committee, good morning. I am Sipho Peter Mashaba, currently the Acting Director, Conventional Arms Control. And I will be presenting regarding our operation on how we support the committee and the activities that we also perform while supporting the committee and the industry. Am I audible?
You are very audible. You are very audible.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, we may proceed, but I'm not seeing the presentation. Am I supposed to load it from this side or it will be loaded? Because
can the
Through
committee
you,
support?
Chair. Oh,
Yes.
sorry, through you, Chair. I have Mr. Mashaba, I have made you a co-host so that you can run your own presentation.
okay. Can it be seen on the screen?
Not
I
yet.
can't see anything, Chair.
Oh yeah, then I'm having a technical glitch. Then I'll request the admin team that side to assist. Given that when I open it, I can see it myself, but I'm not sure if everyone can see it.
Okay. Now we can see it. I suppose from the committee secretariat side.
I'm Mr. Mashaba.
Hello?
I have flighted. It's members can see it, so you can continue.
Okay, then I'll use my print one because on my side it's no longer appearing, but let me, in the interest of time, proceed using the one that I have on paper. Okay, as I indicated through you, Chair, that I'm Sipho Peter Mashaba. The topics that I'll be covering are captured on page 2 and 3 of the presentation. I would not waste time on that, Chair. I will then proceed to page 4. On page 4, Chair, our first paragraph there, we then begin by indicating the mandate that actually the legislation that is actually giving the committee the mandate to administer the business of arms in South Africa. And the reason perhaps that we exist is that there is defense needs as well as the industry that is dealing with these commodities or products and services. And that obviously would require some kind of regulation by government. Perhaps to indicate on my second paragraph, Chair, is that in the regulation of arms in South Africa, the framework is wider. We are one part of the pillar, but over and above the National Conventional Arms Control, we do also have the police, but they are dealing with normal, weapons that even ordinary citizens can acquire. And we also have colleagues also from the DTI. There's a section called the Non-Proliferation Council. They are also our colleagues put together these 3 institutions. We are working together as a part of government. Moving to the next paragraph, Chair. Just to state that over and above the NCACC Act of 2002 as an amendment, we do also have other pieces of legislations that are a responsibility of the committee. One being the regulation of Foreign Military Assistance Act, Act 15 of 1998. In this particular piece of legislation, we largely deal with South African citizens or individuals who are intending to join or enlist with foreign armed forces, or for those who want to provide services in an area of armed conflict. So largely, this one does not concentrate on arms. It has got nothing to do with industry, but we thought it will be important that we cite this responsibility as well. And we also do have what we call the Prohibition or Restriction of Certain Conventional Weapons Act, Act 14 of 2008. This one is mere an obligation regarding the type of weapons or conventional weapons that were prohibited under the Geneva Convention. So under this act, we are largely obligated to report on the downscaling of the munitions that we could still be having within perhaps our defense force. So our obligation here is merely reporting the progress that we are making in terms of downscaling these munitions. Then we jump to page 5 of my presentation, Chair. This page, we are indicating that the responsibility, or rather for the appointment of the committee, lies with the President. This act is empowering the President in terms of Section 5 of this act that he or she may appoint the ministers and deputy ministers to serve in the committee. And this is the case. As it was indicated by the chair, they have now been appointed. It has been gazetted. We then move to page 6, Chair. These are the objects of the committee. I would not waste much time on this, but if you go in terms of 3A, you can see, Chair, that it's about implementing government policy regarding the trade in conventional arms. And you go to Roman figure 1, also indicating that we need to conform to international law and guiding principles. With B, it's also about the protection of our economic and national security interests. And C is to foster national and international confidence in the committee's procedures and processes. We then jump to the functions of the committee on page 7, Chair. The functions as indicated there in terms of Section 4 of the Act, the committee is responsible to establishing processes and structures, of which were one of the structures that has already been established, and also to establish the guidelines. And where necessary, the committee will engage with other agencies of government in support in the enforcement of this Act. And the duty of the committee also is to authorize or even refuse applications that we receive in terms of Section 14. And the committee must also ensure that the permits or authorizations that we issue have supporting or are accompanied by conditions that must be complied with. And the committee is also obligated to keep a register. The register is exactly these applications. When we receive these applications, at the point when the cycle has been completed and a permit has been issued, that becomes a register which will also be subjected to auditing by the Auditor General. And on that page, the last one is about the issuing of reports. The committee, in terms of Section 23 of the Act, is also obligated to issue reports which will be tabled in Parliament quarterly and annually. But over and above the domestic reporting, we also have international obligations under United Nations, under the General Assembly 1, 2, under the Arms Trade Treaty, which is more legally binding, that one. Others are just morally binding kind of arrangements that we have, but the legally binding one that we have currently actively is the Arms Trade Treaty that we are subscribing to. We then move to page 8. It's a continuation of the functions of the committee, that the committee may investigate in the event there are concerns, or there could be also an opportunity to research or benchmark. The committee, through the chair, they may also, engage with, other, departments in support of the functions of the committee, evaluate and comment on trade issues internationally when there is a requirement, and also make recommendations to cabinet. And they may also direct the subcommittees, which would be the substructures that are established in terms of the committee. Currently, we only have one subcommittee, which is called the Scrutiny Committee, but I think it will be captured somewhere in my presentation. Then on page 9, Chair, to indicate is a line that is crossing between the NCACC and the police, which is also a function of the committee as captured on section 4, subsection 3, that the NCACC will consider certain applications that are coming from the police for weapons that are exceeding a particular threshold, that will be 10 per caliber, and ammunition exceeding 20,000. Those applications, the police, in terms of their structures, would not authorize until they are brought before the committee for consideration. Then we move to page 10 and 11. Chair, with your permission, 10 and 11 would perhaps not be of value to this discussion. It was more for discussion with the ministers. With your permission, if you allow me, then we can jump to page 13. Am I still audible, Chair?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay.
But yeah, you are audible. You may continue.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, on page 13 there, we are indicating one of the structures, as I alluded to earlier, which is the Secretariat, which is where I belong, Chair. Our duty, Chair, basically is to provide administrative and technical support to the committee. We are serving as a line of communication between the committee and the industry, the defense industry, and other stakeholders, by the way. And we also execute the decisions that are made by the committee, given that we do administration on behalf of the committee. And also to indicate the logistics and the administrative, arrangements that we have, is that for reporting purposes, we report to the committee when it comes to the functioning of the committee. However, when it comes to administrative matters, which is more the financial part and the administration and where we sit and perform these activities, we sit within, we are allocated within the Department of Defense, of which in terms of section 12, subsection 1 of the Act, the defense is obligated to support our functioning. We then jump to page 14. On page 14, Chair, we are talking about one of the structures also established in terms of the committee. This is a subcommittee where recommendations are made. This committee, upon receiving applications that we process administratively, would consider these applications and make recommendations to the NCACC. This subcommittee will meet 2 weeks before the NCACC meeting will sit. And on page 15, Chair, is more of a depiction of the pillars of government, as I was alluding to on my opening slide that we do have NCACC Act, we have the non-proliferation, we have the police, but as I indicated, we are all pillars of government. We work together, not in silos. And moving to slide number 16, Chair, we are indicating the departments that are supporting the NCACC. Some of the departments will have a representation even at the ministerial level, and some will also have representation at scrutiny level where the scrutinization takes place. So basically, some of these departments will have both a minister and an official at the scrutiny level and support the NCACC. And as part of the structures is in slide number 17, we also have what we call the inspectorate. They are also established in terms of Section 9 of the Act. The inspectorate, basically, these are inspectors who are to ensure that there is compliance with the Act. They will from time to time visit members of the industry or even coordinate with other agencies of government to ensure that there is compliance with the provisions of the Act. Then we move to page 18, Chair. This is a depiction of the process in the making that we as the Secretariat, as you can see in the yellow block below, we receive these applications and that we process, by the way, to the scrutiny committee. That committee then will consider this application and then make recommendations to the NCACC. And in the making of these recommendations, I think 3 positions will be considered. One of the 3 will be considered. One being it's either we recommend an approval, a deny, and hold. A hold simply means we have not approved or denied, but perhaps giving this more time, depending on quite a number of dependencies. There could be a situation in the end user country, or there could be documentation that is defective that needs to be corrected. So there will be quite a number of reasons that will lead to a hold, meaning that this is not falling off from the agenda of the committee. It will still continue in the next agenda item until such time that the committee will pronounce on the final decision whether it's denial or approval. And coming back from those decisions, as the Secretariat, we execute by means of issuing permits. We do have, by the way, Chair, an IT capability that we use to capture this and issue these permits, and we keep these records for auditing, and we also generate reports that will then be tabled in Parliament. We then move to the next slide, Chair. This is more to indicate the committee meetings and the quorum that is required for the meeting to take place. For this committee, Chair, only 4 ministers, which will then include a chair or a deputy chair, depending on the circumstances, will be collaborating for the meeting to proceed. And they only meet once a month at the date that, or the day of the week that will be determined by the committee. In the past years, traditionally, we used to meet on a Thursday. However, perhaps the new committee may decide otherwise. We stand to be directed, Chair. We then move to slide number 20. This is about, we are also depicting the Chair, the issues in the consideration of this application that the committee itself will be contending with. I would not spend much time on that, as the details are contained from page 21 until page 23. As you can see from page 21, Chair, some of the issues that the committee will have to consider before even considering approving or an application is the embargoes that are imposed by UN. Our national security interest is one. And the issue of human rights is also another issue that is also being considered when these applications are being considered. We move to page 22, we continue. There's quite a number that we might also not be contributing to the escalation of regional conflicts in certain regions, issues of crime and terrorism, and many other issues that we consider as listed. These are contained, by the way, Chair. They form part of the Act. This is Section 15 of the Act. This is basically the tool that the committee will be using from time to time when we sanitize this application. And this does not simply mean that applications will enjoy an umbrella kind of a decision making. Each and every application will be considered on its merits, Chair. And we then perhaps I will need to jump to page 24, given that we have considered these criteria that we consider when dealing with these applications. On page 24, Chair, we are simply indicating there the instruments internationally, the obligations that we have and the instruments that we have, that in fact some of them are actually forming part of our Act and our regulations when it comes to domesticating our tool. So we have the ATT, I think I have mentioned this earlier. We are subscribing to that, and we also have a reporting obligation. We have the MBT. These are mostly part of the CCW Act that I mentioned on my first slide, where you have this prohibition and restriction, meaning these are some of the weapons that are no longer in use in a conflict. We need to destroy them completely to day zero, where we don't see this. But perhaps if we do keep, it will be a reasonable number that could be used for our own forces and police for their training purposes. And the last one is what we call the Wassenaar Arrangement. This is not a treaty or a convention. It's rather an arrangement, and it's not legally binding, by the way. It's mostly countries that have come together to decide on issues of the export, regimes and all that. So basically there, it's not legally binding. We may choose what we share in that group. But so far in Africa, we are the only country that is participating there. And then we then jump, Chair, to page 25. It's still a continuation to indicate the history of when we joined this instrument. We joined the Wassenaar in 2006, and the Arms Trade Treaty we joined in 2014, Chair. We then jump to page 26, just to indicate the scope of arms categories that we are dealing with. As you can see, we have got about 8, which is the 8th one is more recently added since 2014. During 1991, there was a General Assembly resolution of which it was compelling members who have signed to agree that there's going to be a register, which was about 7 categories. It was ending with the missiles, that and they will then report to United Nations annually. But it was more encouraging. It was also not legally binding. They were encouraging members to report on these transactions. But under the ATT now, the very same scope is still applicable, with the addition of number 8, paragraph H there, as you can see, small and light weapons and their ammunitions. That is addition to the requirement, but this is now legally binding. Currently, in terms of reporting, we are still reporting to both structures, meaning the General Assembly and the ATT. However, there are discussions that perhaps in the future there will be a single point of reporting. But also to indicate, while still on this slide, Chair, that when it comes to our reporting, we report on all these categories, plus a combination of some of the Wassenaar arrangement, because we do have what we call dual-use goods that must also be reported on, because some may be modified and later they may be used for military purposes. So there is that gray area between pure munitions and dual-use goods. But for our domestic reporting purposes, our report will be 8+, which will then include issues like electronics, technology transfer, warning EW systems, and many more. And then we jump to page 27, Chair. This is activities of international trade. These are the actual permits that we process and issue, and some need to be considered by the committee. The first one, Chair, there is a certificate for registration, meaning that all entities that would like to trade or even possess, there is also an element of possession. They must be registered in terms of the Act, Section 13 of the Act requires that all the entities that are trading and possessing control items, which is the munitions, they must be registered. And once they are registered, they will then come to apply for marketing in the event they would like to market their products internationally. And for those who are lucky, if they succeed in their marketing drive, they may come back and say, we now want to enter into an agreement of sale with a potential buyer, which is now called a contracting permit. By the way, Chair, government does not issue a contract. It's just the term that is being used that we recognize a commercial contract that is in the making. Hence, it is a contracting permit, meaning this is where ministers or the committee, the NCACC, will sit and consider and make a decision, because this is changing ownership to another country. So obviously we need, or the committee rather, would need to sit and sanitize all these applications against Section 15 of the Act. We then, once those permits have been considered positively, then the applicants or the permit holders will be allowed to export. But when it comes to exportation, particularly that are linked to a contracting permit that has been issued, they will also have a second round of an assessment, given that when dealing with countries, it's more like dealing with the weather. There will be times where the situation may change overnight, and that ought to be brought to the attention of the committee. Hence, we have to review this application to check whether the circumstances are still the same as at the time when they were applying for a contracting permit. But if there's a material change, then we may not consider some of these export permits. Import permit, Chair, largely here, it will be our own forces, and it could also be members of the defense industry when they buy the spares and components that they use in the making of their products. And the position I indicated, this will largely be your museums, collectors, or even the private security industry who want to possess unserviceable military or decommissioned military and police equipment, particularly vehicles. They may want to keep this, possess this for use as their business tools. And the two-way permit, I would not waste time, is also an import and export, but this one is simplified to enable the industry to have two legs of the transaction, meaning they can import and export using the same permit, particularly for instances where there is no change of ownership. It could be shows, it could be demonstrations, and even repairs of some of the items that were sold. And the conveyance is where our neighboring countries would perhaps at some point require that they use our territory, be it air, sea, or even our land, to convey the equipment that they bought elsewhere in the world. And the domestic transfer is happening domestically, this one, where entities that are registered in terms of the Act may be exchanging or selling some of their items to other companies, depending on the circumstances. And the last part is the distraction, where there could be instances where some of the decommissioned equipment would then be considered for destruction, and that, as it will be happening, is where the committee will deploy our inspectors to go and observe this activity and also provide their independent report to the committee for consideration. And the last one, Chair, is the dual-use goods. As I was indicating, that technology is evolving. We do come across items that by design, they are not pure military, but with the technology, some can be modified and be used for military applications. We then jump to slide number 28. Chair, this slide is linking directly to slide 26, where we have got categories of arms. But to simplify or to enhance the understanding of how these items in application can cause certain effects, there are categories that we have. Like the category A will then be including items that are heavy. They may cause casualties and even damage major structures. These will be your tanks, your bombs, and many other things. So in considering this application over and above section 15, we also need to check the type of equipment that is being sold, where it is going to be received. Will it be used for the purpose they are declaring, or if the situation in that country is suggesting that they may be deviating from the undertaking that they are making, then we also need to consider the primary use of these particular commodities in terms of the categories. And we also do have B, it's also lethal there. You may find largely there, it will be small and light weapons. These are lethal weapons. Category C, it will be largely support, items that are supporting a lot of these category A and B. However, internationally, there is a debate of concern regarding category C. There is a question as to whether if a country is involved in a conflict, yes, category C by designs, a lot of these items would not harm anyone or cause any damage, but they are more enablers, meaning they will be enabling a participant in a conflict to continue participating and do certain things which will enable them to be also in that conflict. So there is a debate that we also need to consider them thoroughly as to what will they be using that for, especially if the country situation or the government is not stable, then there must be a due consideration of those facts. I would not spend time on the following other categories, as they more become simpler on page 29. I think the key ones are on page 28, the A to C. This is where issues are happening. On page 30, Chair, perhaps it will answer one of the questions that was asked before. As and when these items are exchanging hands, meaning exportation, maybe to put it correct, when the exportations are due to happen, Chair, before that happens, the buyer, who is the importer, must provide an assurance. This is a practice internationally, especially for countries that are subscribing to international structures like UNATT and all that. They understand the language. This is the language that is being used, meaning they will give these undertakings that they will not do other things, which will include alienating these items or re-exporting these items to the next country without the consent of the OEM or supplier country, which in this case, it will be South Africa. So from time to time, we do get a request from some of these countries who bought equipment some years back to say, we do request your consent, we want or we desire to alienate some of the items or re-export them to some of the countries. And the committee will apply its mind in terms of Section 15, and not all of them will obviously be positive. Some will be denied, and that is the mechanism that we have. But as one element of the EUC, we do also require that the buyer must provide what we call a delivery verification to confirm that indeed they have received the commodities, the munitions, to avoid a situation where, as a country that is selling, we perhaps don't even know what happened to the commodities in transit. So the verification is a confirmation to our government, which will also enable us to report under United Nations, because there is a question that is saying these deliveries, how do you determine whether they were just at authorization level or they were confirmed to be actuals? So when there is a delivery verification, to us, it's certainty that that was actually, it was not only authorized. And also, if you look in paragraph F on page 31, it says containing such other matters as may be prescribed, meaning that the committee may also impose other conditions depending on the country that we are dealing with. But over and above this, there is also an element which is suggesting that if we are suspecting malicious intent by the buyer after the goods have been delivered, we as the government or the OEM country may engage diplomatically with the buyer to a point where we may even send our inspectors or diplomats to visit and verify that our items are still there as were delivered. So that's another mechanism that we use, which is used internationally. All the countries that are subscribing to this, they do the same. They will even come to South Africa to come and check whether we are still keeping what we bought from them. We move to page 32. This page 32, Chair, with your permission, I don't think it will be applicable for this committee. It was applicable to the ministers for their briefing yesterday. I think with your permission then, Chair, I will jump to page 33, which is about the reporting obligations. As I indicated earlier, Chair, in terms of Section 23 of the Act, the committee has an obligation to report, 1, to Parliament, and 2, to report to its international obligations. Currently, we have the ATT, which is the Arms Trade Treaty. We have United Nations as well, General Assembly reporting, which I indicated earlier that at some point, the 2 ATT and UNSCA may be merged for one reporting line. And we also have under UN Program of Action, where we work together with the police, because it will scale down to even commercial firearms and the cases that the police would be having, the number of weapons that were confiscated, the number of weapons that are due to be destroyed, or the ones that have been destroyed. So it's a quite a comprehensive reporting mechanism that we have under UN Program of Action. And over and above that, as I indicate, we also have the Vasenar, but this is a voluntary kind of an arrangement. It's not legally binding. We cherry pick on what we share with our colleagues from other countries. We then move to page 34. It was simply a continuation, Chair, regarding the disclosures that not all the members will disclose. We are mindful of the disclosures that will ensure that certain parts of the reports or certain type commodity elements will not be disclosed on our reports. We are mindful of quite a number of military and commercial interests. And on page 35, Chair, it's all about oversight. As indicated, we are subject to audit by the AG as it is contained in Section 12, subsection 2 of the Act. The AG will audit the committee on the registers, which is the permits that we issue, and the processes that have been developed by the committee. And over and above that, where the committee, as it is the case now, would also be subjected to appearing before the committee for oversight purposes. And basically, that will be the end of our presentation, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mashaba, and to the Minister. Can we now take hands? Honorable Niehaus.
Thank you, Chair, and I really want to thank Mr. Mashaba for the very detailed presentation that he had given us. I've got 3 questions. The first one relates to Act 15 of 1998, which also covers issues around foreign military assistance and also the Prohibition of Mercenaries Associations Assistance Act. Chair, I want to know whether this, in terms of the work that the committee is doing, only manages issues around weapons and hardware, or does it also deal with human beings, with citizens of South Africa getting involved in armed conflicts in areas that would be unacceptable? And this, again, as I've referred before to the issue of apartheid Israel, relate to South African citizens who illegally joined the Israeli Defense Force and then get involved there. Does the committee deal with these issues? Then secondly, Chair, I would like to understand exactly how the committee deals with the regulatory category C, which was on slide 28, about the using of enabling equipment that can actually help to activate very lethal weapons. A while ago, there's been a very disturbing report that there were South African manufactured drones used in the DRC, in the war conflict environment of the DRC, where South African troops are deployed as part of the UN peacekeeping mission, but that those drones were deployed with testing purposes to see how effective they are, and that they were not meeting the various regulations that there are with regards to the usage of such drones. What I'm really saying is it would be unacceptable for a private sector company manufacturing an armed or unarmed drone, but unmanned drone, and use it in that environment for testing purposes, and whether the committee deals with those particular issues. Then lastly, Chair, I think overall we must express our appreciation to the committee for the work that it does. This is extremely important work because it prevents our country from getting involved in areas of armed conflict and international conflict that can compromise us. They certainly deal with very important issues of national security. And I think we must appreciate that this committee's work is essential for South Africa to be able to continue to be one of those countries that pursue a human rights agenda and doesn't allow itself to get embroiled in conflicts that are very unacceptable in terms of our own human rights commitments. I would like to ask Mr. Mashala to give us perhaps a little bit more detail about how they apply those human rights provisions which South Africa ascribed to in terms of the impact that it has on the decisions to approve exports of weapons and also the sale on of weapons to other countries or not, and to what extent those human rights conditions impact on the final decisions that they take. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Niehaus. Could we now take Honorable Mutsa?
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you very much to Mr. Mashaba for the very comprehensive deck of slides. My question relates to the digitization process in the unit or in the department, and if Mr. Mashaba can just give the committee an update on how far that is and to what extent they are able to electronically issue and work through the application for permits and, of course, then the issuing thereof.
Thank you, Honorable Pala.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Mr. Mashaba for his presentation. My question goes to the Minister. When Mashaba introduced himself here, he said he's an acting director of the NCACC. In my and I think Chairperson, as you introduced, in your opening remarks, you indicated that this is the first meeting, which is more about information, not necessarily engaging on and core fundamental issues. But my question to the Minister is, this directorate appears to be in the center of supporting the NCACC to perform its responsibilities. So the question is, what is the state of the DCAC in terms of its work complement? That is what I want to know from the Minister, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I see no further hands, I therefore invite the Minister, if she's still online. But yes, the Minister had apologized. So, Mr. Mashaba, please, you may respond. And I think you noted the question on vacancies in the DCAC. I think what you did not present was the structure of the DCAC and whether we have vacancies, the issues of timeous responses from the NCACC to applications by industry, issues of digitization, which they had raised earlier. So, yes, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the first question regarding the Act 15 of 1998, well, the indication there is that there is another act which was meant to replace the current Act of 1998. However, there is a process underway, Chair, that we perhaps are going to amend the very same Act. We had a discussion with the Chair and the committee yesterday. There is a process that will unfold soon to address the challenges that we have under that particular piece of legislation. And perhaps to answer the second question, which was whether hardware will be involved. This act does not deal with hardware, but rather individuals or South African citizens who will want to be enlisted or join armed forces in other countries or provide services. It could be security services depending on the circumstances, but in an area of armed conflict. So basically, that is what the act is seeking to regulate. And coming to the issue of the drones that are being cited, or maybe perhaps to start with category C issue, enabling instruments. Basically, Chair, as I was indicating on the activities, trading activities, one is that if an entity that is registered with us, meaning the NCACC, would want to export and import an item for a demonstration, they will apply for what we call a two-way permit. And when submitting those applications, they will provide all the supporting documentation, including the invitation, which will be indicating that indeed they were invited to go and participate in a particular marketing exercise or demonstration. But again, as I indicated, Chair, that when it comes to regulating the administration of the Act, we deal with pure munitions as well as dual-use items. Hence, I'm saying the dual-use items, to a certain extent, it's a gray area, given that by their very nature, they were not designed, but some are capable of being modified to become military items. But in the instance or the question that is being asked, as I recall, there is an element of questions that are moving towards the direction of the Department of Defense, of which I would not attempt responding to that when it comes to issues of the DRC. But as far as I'm concerned, even the Department of Defense, when they deploy, they do approach this office for permits. So I'm not sure about this particular incident, but if there is evidence, perhaps we need to be made aware and we will investigate accordingly. And the regulation of drones, Chair, perhaps to indicate the category C that I included as part of the categories that we have. Just like any other category, when the committee considers application, it will be on a case-by-case basis, meaning there is no one-size-fits-all approach, meaning each and every application will be determined on its merits. So irrespective of the category that is involved, there's quite a number of issues, including the question that is coming that how do we, the committee is managing the issue of human rights. If you go to section 15, those elements are there, the issues of human rights, the UN embargoes. We sanitize that against that. And besides, the committee in its consideration would have had, inputs from other departments that I indicated in one of the slides, your DIRCO, your intelligence, defense is also there, and many other departments, including the police. So the committee on its own does not sit and make decisions without considering all the facts that are brought forward by or submitted by way of inputs from these other supporting structures. So the committee will take into account section 15 and other inputs that are brought forward by other government institutions. Which one? The issue of digitizing our capability, Chair, yes. We do have currently, yes, the old 2006 system, which we are planning to decommission perhaps in the next 4 or 5 months. The new system that was under development has since been completed. All that we are waiting for is minor issues that we need to correct. They are busy with the connections. In no time, we will be finalizing training the users, and the system will then go live. So the issue of digitizing, but perhaps to also illuminate on the capability that we will be having once the system is implemented. This will only be phase 1, meaning we will still be seeing paper in circulation. However, the plan is that coming to phase 2 of the system, we will go up to 90% of digitizing the system to a point where the industry will no longer be walking to the to our offices. They will apply online, but for now it will still be the traditional way of doing it. They will still come and deliver, given that there is also still challenges internationally. If I may, we do have the documents that we receive from other countries. They will come with under the certain conventions, and they need to have be checked by the lawyers and other things, and they must contain the apostles and all that, which the question that we are having is that can they be digitized? Because when they are submitted originally, they will be having these ribbons and the apostles that are having seals that, you know, if you copy them, you may lose the origin or the origin of the document. So that is a question, but not only here in South Africa, that is happening elsewhere in the world, the agenda as to whether in the future we'll be able to allow as a country and many other countries copies or digitized copies of these undertakings that people are exchanging, because somehow they must be accepted as you know, legalized document with this apostille. So that's one issue that is also holding the process. But over and above that, the AG was also concerned that we should not go 100% digital, because when they perform their audit process, they are still relying largely on paper. So it's one of those issues that we need to tweak with the AG as well as our partners internationally to agree on the way forward. And Chair, regarding the issue of the structure, our apologies. Perhaps in our next appearance, we will attach the structure, but issues relating to the structure were also discussed with the committee yesterday, together with the Minister of Defense, who is supporting the functioning of this structure. And there are plans underway to fast track certain processes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Would Deputy Minister, excuse me, Olomisa Omkungo want to say anything?
Yes, Chairperson, I will respond to an issue which was raised in the first presentation, that of a delay in payment of service providers. I would suggest that the honorable member, through the secretary of the Joint Standing Committee, submit the list directly to my office, the list of those who are complaining that they have not been paid. Then I will facilitate the process to the office of the Secretary for Defense and also to the Chief of the Defense Force, because some of the procurements are monitored by the Chief of the Defense Force, whilst the accounting officer overall of the department is the Secretary for Defense. So if I can get those by Monday, then I will be able to move across and table them to the SecDef and say why there are delays here. Of course, there will be delays in certain areas if there are investigations underway in order to verify the authenticity or otherwise of their claims. Because as you know, the Department of Defense, especially in the procurement department, have been found wanting. So we don't want it to perpetuate that situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister. See, there are two new hands. I must again, colleagues, remind you that the meeting is scheduled to
Chair, we can't hear you.
Forgive me. Forgive me, I was speaking with my mic. I was saying, I note that there are two new hands. I must remind you that the meeting is scheduled to end in at 1300 hours. But let me take you, Honorable Niehaus, and followed by Honorable Hatting.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very quick. I will provide the information that I have regarding the unapproved use of drones in the DRC to Mr. Mashaba. That will be done soon. But my question was not fully answered, and I do think it needs to be clarified. I was asking a specific question about the issue of demonstration and experimental use of equipment, including unmanned drones in war zones. Will the committee approve the use of unmanned drones and other equipment for demonstration and experimental purposes when those products are not yet fully developed? Therefore, the consequences of how they get deployed and what their impact will be is not clear in war zones, and will that be considered to be an ethical thing to do? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Hatting.
Thanks, Chair. Will be brief. I really want to express my appreciation to Deputy Minister Holomisa for attempting to step in and facilitate payments. The information that I've mentioned earlier comes from the report from Treasury, the second Treasury report. So in the Treasury report, they don't mention service providers or goods providers, they only mention departments. I will send the report from Treasury to the Minister through the channels that he requested. But I really appreciate his sharing our concern. Thanks.
Thank you very much, honorable members, and thank you, Deputy Minister, for your positive response. I think there is a question that Honorable Niehaus has raised. Are we able to get a response on it, or Mr. Mashaba? You must also be mindful that if you are not able to respond properly and comprehensively now, you are allowed within 7 working days to provide a written response to the committee, which will be forwarded to the honorable member who asked the question and other members, because now that the question is asked, it is of interest to us. Are you able to respond to that, Mr. Mashaba?
I think the latter would be the best option, given that there will be information that we will be receiving from the honorable member, and that will form the basis for us to investigate and provide a comprehensive response.
Okay, thank you. Within 7 working days, just as a reminder, you are allowed to, leave the committee. We are now getting into the items that are specific to members of the Joint Standing Committee. It's the consideration of the report of the SANDF letter of deployment support of the South African Police Service. I take it, Dr. van Rensburg, you will be presenting it.
Good morning, co-chairs and members. Yes, I will be presenting it briefly. It's a very short report. I'll take members through it quickly. Members will recall that the committee received a briefing on the letter of the President in terms of the SANDF's deployment with the SAPS. So this report is simply in terms of Rule 150, Joint Rule 156.1 of the Joint Rules of Parliament. The letter for consideration included was the letter dated the 6th of November. The report that we have here simply states that the letters comply with the requirements of the Section 2013 of the Constitution, as well as Section 18.2 of the Defence Act, by including all the relevant information that is required in the Act to be presented by Parliament. And that is why the Defence Force deployed, how many troops were deployed, the area of deployment, the duration of the deployment, and the expected expenditure of the deployment. So in terms of consideration of the deployment letters, the committee considered the relevant letters during its meeting of 15 November 2024, and they received the briefing from the SANDF on the details of the deployment. And then we also included, as per members' request, some of the observations made during this meeting, including the following. the committee noted an increased reliance on the SANDF to support the SAPS in terms of internal security operations. Secondly, the committee agreed that the deployment aligns with the prescripts of the Constitution. Number three, the committee noted that the current deployment remains unfunded and that there is a need for it to be funded. Number four, the committee noted that the deployment in support of the SAPS may detract from other priority deployment areas, specifically the SANDF's deployment on South Africa's borders. And lastly, the committee noted that a special code of conduct is in place for the deployment and that this is important to ensure compliance with human rights. So while we included this observations for members, lastly, in terms of the recommendations, in compliance with Joint Rule 156.1, and after having considered the details of deployment according to the presidential letter dated 6 November 2024, no objections were recorded from the Joint Standing Committee of Defence. And then this report is just to be noted for Parliament. So this will not be submitted as a matter of debate, but this is to be noted and published in the ATC. Just to clarify, members, that while this is to comply with the joint rules of Parliament, the further matters around this deployment can be further engaged with by this committee, and this committee probably will in the coming year engage thoroughly on this and many other deployments. So this letter is just to have a quick response. This report is just to have a quick response to Parliament and to comply with the rules. But however, there is significant opportunity for this committee to dig further into the actual details and considerations of the deployment. Thank you, co-chairs. I'll hand back to you for further consideration, and then we just need to have a proposer and a seconder subject to any changes in this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Niehaus.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to point 4, in terms of the response of the committee to this deployment, where it says the committee noted that the deployment in support of SAPS may detract from other priority deployment areas, specifically the SANDF deployment on South African borders. We did say that, but we also said something more. And I think it is important that it should be reflected. We said that the financial implications of these deployments detract from the SANDF's ability to deal with the equipment and also handling of its employees in terms of employment in a way that addresses the needs of the SANDF. So we need to find the right wording, but it must say that it detracts from the capacity of the SANDF to address the critical issues with regards to its own rejuvenation and the future kind of South African Defence Force that we should have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Can we then have a mover for the adoption of the report? With those comments.
I move, Chair. Sorry, I didn't raise my hand, but I move. I see the my concern is captured there, and I'm happy with the way it's been done. Thank you. I move for the report to be adopted.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Can we please have a seconder for the adoption of the report?
I second, Chair.
I second. I was getting worried there that nobody wanted to second this. Thank you very much, colleagues. Can we then move to the final item, the consideration of the minutes of the previous meeting? I'm actually happy with how we are consistent in adopting the minutes, because I've seen a few other committees having to deal with the minutes, with many minutes. So I'm happy with how we are handling this. You may proceed, Dr. van Rensburg.
Chair, Nandipa will address the minutes, yes.
Yes, thank you, Nandipa.
Okay, these are minutes of the 15th of November, which was 2 weeks back. The agenda item was the briefing on the letter of employment and the consideration and adoption of the third term program of the committee, presentation of the 6th Parliament Legacy Report, as well as the midterm report. This is the attendance register. And then welcome and apologies. Okay, page 2, any corrections on page 2? Any corrections on page 3?
You may proceed.
Page 4. Page 5, the last page. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you. Colleagues, do we have a mover for the adoption of the minutes?
Chair, I'll move so.
Thank you, Mr. Harting. Do we have
Second,
another?
Chair.
Thank you very much. The minutes are therefore adopted. Honorable Co-Chair, I hand over to you now.
Thank you, Chair. And once again, good afternoon, honorable members. Let me first appreciate your presence here and the presence of our deputy ministers, and also the minister in the presidency in her absentia. And I would say this is the first meeting, honorable members, dealing with a challenge as a result of what the Deputy Minister General Holomesa mentioned here, the defunding of the department. And this was reflected on the presentation presented by Mr. Sandile Ndlovu, the chairperson of the board of the defense industry. He has made a very comprehensive report. We all have it, and I think we will study it further to understand the industry. And secondly, the presentation made by Mr. Mashawa on the directorate, which seemed to be the center, the engine of supporting the ministries which are involved in the NCACC, which is important, which as well Mr. Sandrento spoke about it. That is an enabler which must assist the defense force or the industry to move forward. I think we have all understood what was presented here, and we will, I think all of us assist with what was presented, and to make sure that we prepare ourselves for the next meeting or the work ahead. This has been eye-opening, I think, to many of us. And as I said, it's a first meeting. I think it will make it in the next meetings we'll able to engage more on these issues. And honorable members, these are critical. These are issues which are critical to our country, to the defense. And as the chairperson mentioned earlier, that to the sovereignty of our country, we will together make sure that we work on these things and assist or work together with the ministry, Deputy Minister Hulmisa and Deputy Minister, and we will work together with you to ensure that we rectify whatever challenge the industry is facing. I will not be long. Let me take this opportunity once again and thank you, members, and thank the support staff, and say this is the beginning of our work ahead. We wish you a pleasant festive season. Yeah, we'll meet as soon as we come back from the Christmas holidays. And yeah, the meeting stands adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, co-chairs. Thank you, members. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair.
Abulela.
Lovely festive holidays.
Festive holidays. Bye-bye.
Happy festive, guys, chairpersons. Greetings. Bye.
Happy festive, honorable members, and all our support staff. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
I thought that chairs would take us for dinner. Thank you.
There's no budget.
Yeah, the industry must organize the budget next time.
Okay,
Thank you, man.